Hey, what's up? What's going on out there? I was looking at this video with this pastor named Alan Parr, and he was talking about whether or not Charlie Kirk was a racist, and he was giving a so-called Christian perspective on it. And I tried to get through some of the video, but it was just tough. I can tell this dude really doesn't know what he's talking about. But I'm gonna let the video play and give my one-two about it.
How should Christians respond to racists? Now, I am not going to go on record and say that Charlie Kirk was a racist, but for the sake of argument, for the sake of this video, let's just assume that he was a straight up racist. Let's just assume that. I'm not saying that, I'm saying let's assume that. The bigger and more important question is this: how does the Bible instruct us as Christians? Because if you're a Christian, I assume you believe the Bible is true and you want to align your life with the Bible, at least you say you do. Let's see how much you do by the end of this video. How does the Bible instruct us as Christians to respond to racists? Now, first, if you believe someone is a racist, that would put them into the category of being your enemy. And the Bible has a lot to say about how you and I should treat our enemies. So let's dig into it, okay? Matthew chapter 5, 43 through 48 says this: You have heard the law that says, love your neighbor and hate your enemies. So you can love the people that are nice to you, but you can hate your enemies. But Jesus says, I say, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. In that way, you will be acting as, here it is, true children of your.
See, now this just goes into like regular church pseudo Christian jargon, honestly. That's why it was kind of tough for me to get through this video because these people like him, especially these black pastors, have been taught this um passive type of personality traits through the Christian church, the seminary school, all the above. That's why during the civil rights movement, a lot of black folks were getting hit upside the head at lunch counters and things like that, getting bit by dogs and hit with water hoses and singing "We Shall Overcome" because of Negro pastors like that saying you should love your enemies and things like that. When he says things like that, that clearly tells me that he has no understanding of any scripture or biblical teaching. When the Messiah was talking about loving your enemies, he was talking about your brothers, people that were part of the tribes of Israel. And it wasn't talking about Canaanite, Jezebite, or any of those people in that area, Phoenicians, whatever you want to say. It was talking about those nations of people. And when you go back to the Old Testament, it has parts in Exodus where Moses was talking about if you see your enemies, animal in the burden, help them out, even if you don't get along with them, and things like that. But the Messiah is talking about the nation of Israel, helping out your brother. And like I said, these people have been allowing Negroes to get bopped upside the head and say, oh, we should forgive you, and any type of racist attitude that you might have towards us. It's just, honestly, it's disheartening that this still goes on. And like, clearly he's not doing any type of real studying.
Father in heaven, true children. And then it goes on to say this a couple verses later: if you love only those who love you, what reward is there for that? Even corrupt tax collectors do that much. Even pagans, even non-believers do that. If you are kind only to your friends, how are you, Mr. or Mrs. Christian, different from anyone else? Even pagans do that. But you are to be perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Notice this. Jesus is saying you don't get any credit for loving people who are nice to you, speak well of you, who love you in return. No, even unbelievers can do that. That's easy. But what separates us as Christians is how we can love even people who are our enemies, how we can love people who are even racist toward us.
Again, that type of attitude is what got so-called black people's teeth kicked in during the civil rights movement. this whole "we shall overcome" crap. And like I said earlier, I'm still shocked that it goes on today, especially with as much information is out there now, especially with scripture, biblical scriptural breakdowns and things like that. This dude should be way more aware of what the text says, what the scripture says, and should be following the text. And if he knew that, then he would know what an enemy is within the text. Because if he goes back to the OT, it'll show you the real enemies of Israel. They just got rid of because those people were defiling the land and practicing all type of abominable acts and things like that. So the enemy wasn't your next door neighbor, because trust and believe me, if I know somebody that's flat out racist, I'm not just going to go give him a hug, and I'm not damn sure I'm not praying for him.
When we do that, we prove that we are true children of God. So far, we are to love someone who is a racist. And we could go and drill down a little bit further by looking at 1 Corinthians 13, where it talks about love is about being what? Kind. So are we posting kind things about Charlie Kirk or anybody else, Donald Trump, anybody that we don't like, or if you don't like, let me just say it that way. Or it also says not being easily irritated. And not keeping a record of wrong. So we're supposed to love these people. Now,
again, even if you go into the New Testament, the disciples were gathering scattered Israelites and Judean, not Judean, but Jews that were in the land and looking for scattered Israelites. That's what their duty was, and that's what the Messiah sent them to do. Not to go loving and hugging everybody and loving their enemies, loving people that's whooping their ass, and all this other type stuff. I don't know. I don't know what some of these pastors be on, especially some of these Negro pastors, man. That's another thing too. Like, I see a lot of people saying I'm not going to church because X, Y, and Z. And the reason some people aren't going to church, especially so-called black people, is people like this, pastors like this. It's just a waste of time, honestly, because they're not really showing those people who they are and where they come from.
Thing, it says we are also to pray for them. So let me ask you a question. Have you spent any time at all, if you're bitter about Charlie Kirk, you don't like him, whatever, you don't like what he stood for, you thought he was a racist, whatever, have you spent any time at all praying for his friends?
Hell no. I don't know what the hell this dude, what type of psychosis this guy's under. But if any so-called black person hears this and take heed to my voice, please stay away from pastors like this. Pastors like this is going to get your teeth kicked in, is going to get your ass kicked, and he's not going to show you who you are and what you are and what those texts really mean. But that's my 1-2 about it. Leave your commentary. Let me know what you think.